Fox, a licensed real estate agent in Massachusetts. I'm here today with Michelle Duplessis. She is the founder of Mass Residents Against Crumbling Foundations to discuss a critical issue that is impacting many Massachusetts residents. Crumbling foundations caused by a mineral pyrrhotite in the foundation. This is an issue not only of property value, but also of the structural integrity of our communities and the future of our neighbors. Michelle, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. An issue obviously close to my heart because I am an affected homeowner and I have met so many over the past few years. There's many families in Massachusetts that will be affected by this.
For those of you that are unfamiliar with this problem, a large number of homes throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts are being impacted by faulty concrete foundations that contain pyrrhotite, a highly reactive, naturally occurring mineral that begins to degrade and expand when it makes contact with air and water. Even at low concentrations, this mineral is responsible for premature crumbling of concrete foundations in our communities. To repair one of these homes costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Funding for the repairs is unavailable through traditional means, such as equity loans, because equity is lost when a home is found to have this issue. Michelle, could you tell us a little bit about your personal story with finding pyrrhotite in your foundation?
Sure. It was December of 2017. Hard to believe, almost 7 years ago already. And I was reading an article online about a home in Long Meadow and it was someone I knew, which is what drew me to the article to begin with. And I read it, and it was about him and his foundation, and the picture is him rubbing his hand on the wall as some of the concrete is falling off in his hand. And his whole story, and I read further and I saw the name of the company that supplied his concrete, and see, even now when I think of it, my stomach turns because I knew our concrete came from the same company. Of course, years later, we know that that is not the only source here in Massachusetts. There are multiple sources, so we are affected all the way to the New Hampshire border and moving east. To Dracut and Mendon and Boxford. We have 40 towns now affected. I'm just not the kind of person who takes things really lightly, so instantly I was like, okay, what's the fix? What do I do to solve this problem? When I realized that we had this concrete. And I looked at my homeowner's policy because I figured that's the most natural step. And there, right at the beginning, is no coverage for foundations. I don't know how that's possible. You can't have a house without a foundation, but there it is. And to make matters worse, when I looked at collapse under my homeowner's policy, they only cover an abrupt collapse, where it used to cover, 6 months before we found out we had this, it used to cover the peril of collapse. 6 months before we found out we had this problem, we had a change also in our homeowner's policy under the definition of collapse. Where it used to cover the peril of collapse, it now only covers an abrupt collapse. And if you don't mitigate the reason for the abrupt collapse, if you know of it, then that's also not covered. So insurers absolutely wrote themselves out of any responsibility for this. And it's kind of devastating. So I was like, okay, well, what's our legal recourse? And there isn't any, because there's no testing requirements or safe levels of pyrrhotite identified. So there's no negligence to prove. So that wasn't an option. And then, of course, as you mentioned, our equity was gone. We called our bank, and because we had paid off our loan like 1.5 years before we found out we had the problem. And they said, sorry, you only have equity in the value of your land. So we had nowhere to turn except to our government. So I called our state rep, Brian Ash, and asked him if he knew about this, and he said, yeah, I'm starting to hear about it. I said, well, gee, Brian, we were just getting ready to start freshening up our home. It's 20 years old. He said, don't do that. You're going to need every penny. Kind of devastating.
Yeah.
I don't take that very lightly. Like, I have no options. So I started researching and looking for other people who might be affected. I thought, we can't be the only two, and it just doesn't make any sense. And I found a few others, and in June of 2018, we formed the Massachusetts Residents Against Crumbling Concrete, which is morphed into Crumbling Foundations.
So I think that there's probably people out there who aren't necessarily impacted by this crumbling concrete. Why should they care, and why should they help take action?
Yeah, no, that is certainly one of the issues that we have had to bring forward to people, to have them understand that this doesn't just impact the individual homeowner that is affected through their foundation. When they lose the value of their home, or as assessors call it, the full and fair market value, then they will go to their town and they will file for abatement or a reassessment of their home, and their taxes will be reduced. And as people come forward and do that in larger numbers, our cities and towns are losing large revenue, which means either a loss of services to everyone in the town or an increase in taxes to everyone else to make up the difference. And then of course, additionally to that, something you would understand is if you have a development built by one builder, they typically use the same suppliers, same subcontractors. So if one home is identified, we are finding that it is affecting the values or the traffic on listed homes. You know, how many people are coming to see those homes. This is happening particularly in Rutland and Holden area right now. How many homes did you have built between 1983 and 2015? During that time, we had almost 1,200 homes built.
Wow. Ooh, scary.
Yeah. So if you took each one of those homes and took even 50% of their value and their taxes were cut in half, that's like well over $1 million. What would that do to our town? And that's the political pressure that we need from the towns to say we can't handle this. State's got to do something.
So for those that are looking at building a new home, is this something that they should be concerned with?
Oh, absolutely. This July 1st, the Mass DOT was supposed to begin a testing program for quarries in the state, but they're still working out the kinks on all of this and how to best do the program. So at this point, no one knows which quarries in our state, and we know there are some because houses are testing positive as far north as Winchendon and Westminster and Drake and Boxford. We know that there are other sources because material from Connecticut isn't going to be trucked, or concrete is not going to be trucked 2 hours away. It can't stay in the truck that long. So yeah, there's still risk out there, and you know, some of the folks that have replaced their foundation using their retirement funds, one of the companies doing that actually has the concrete tested as it's being poured. And before they put the house down, they get the results so that the homeowner can know that this isn't happening to them again. One of the things I also want to mention is when people are looking for this issue, it isn't always wide cracking. That's when it's advanced. Okay, that's really when you're getting to a state where there could be structural damage to the house. But the beginnings of this start out as fine cracking. You really need to look close and use some bright lighting and look for fine cracking that is horizontal or in like a road map pattern. And that's the beginnings of the telltale sign. You may have a structural crack, for settlement that's just straight vertical. But if it starts to have something going off of it in another direction, you might be concerned about that as well. One of the things that I also would love to mention to people is, they're always asking questions about can you do anything to save the foundation? There's a company offering to help me with this, and I could do this for like $25,000. That's not the case. The problem is happening inside the wall, and there is no quick fix. There's no coating you can put on the wall to prevent it from happening, and you can't even build what's called a sister wall inside of the foundation to hold the house up. It may accomplish that temporarily, but because the wall that the house is actually resting on is lifting, it's going to lift it up off of that sister wall. Yeah. And it's bowing. As it gets worse, it bows.
For those that do find that they have pyrrhotite in their foundation, what are their options as far as reimbursement? What kind of numbers are they looking at?
Okay, for testing to find out if you have that issue, the state now reimburses 100% of the structural engineer inspection up to $600, and typically you can get it done for that. And the core test for 2 cores is typically around $2,500, and the state reimburses 75% of that up to a max of $4,000. So if you needed to have more than 2 cores, you still be able to get most of your money back.
And how should they start this process?
Well, I would recommend that they go to our website. It's MASSRACF, so that's Mass Residents Against Crumbling Foundations .com, and we have resources on there for them to get the forms that they need to file for reimbursement, or to find a core testing company or a structural engineer. Anyone listed on our website has not paid to be there. They are simply someone that another homeowner has used successfully. So they come with a reference. And as long as another homeowner has used them and felt good about the process, then we're willing to put their name up there so that that's a resource for other homeowners. After a homeowner finds out that their home tests positive, then I would encourage them to go to their Board of Assessors, their principal assessor in their town, and file for tax abatement or reassessment. Towns do it differently. They're not all the same. And because your home is supposed to be taxed on full and fair cash market value, then obviously it's not going to have the same value as a home without a crumbling foundation. And that pressure that puts on your town is pushing towns to push the state to do something. As much as I honestly didn't want to do that, because at the time I was a town employee and I knew where my paycheck was coming from. Without the tax revenue, our town is in trouble. It's really difficult to bring people forward.
Yeah.
But really the only fix that we have available to us is if our state does something like the state of Connecticut has, and provide funding for homeowners in this situation. Connecticut's program provides $190,000 as a maximum. I can tell you that over the 5 years that they've been replacing foundations there, now over 1,000 of them, the cost has come down, because at the beginning there were only a few companies doing this work.
Yeah.
And now as time has gone on, more companies are doing it, and the prices come down, and their average there now is around $153,000. So if you build it, they will come, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it has really helped homeowners there to recover. They pay per square foot of floor and per lineal foot of wall.
Yeah. So in that regard, why is this taking so long to kind of put into place in Massachusetts?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that's better left for our legislators to answer, to be quite honest. We have really gained great support. This year, we had an amendment on the Affordable Homes Act that was unanimously approved by the Senate, which was fantastic. It would have gotten a commission started. It wouldn't fund the program yet, but that commission would have been tasked with determining the best way forward here. How do we start a program? Do we start our own state agency? Do we join the Connecticut program? And how do we fund it here? In Connecticut, they have a $12 surcharge. It's $1 a month on every homeowner's policy. That helps to fund it. The state has also bonded for money in Connecticut to keep this program running.
So it's clear that your group is not looking for punitive damages. You're not looking to go after the concrete companies. What is your ultimate goal?
Our ultimate goal is to just determine where this mineral is coming from, because it's the mineral that's causing the problem, and not use that aggregate in concrete. It can be used for fill or other things. We certainly do not want to be causing businesses, concrete businesses or aggregate businesses, to go out of business, because we are going to need them just as much or more than anyone else. I think that this is something that we can do cooperatively together. I think that it's all hands on deck on this. The industry, our legislators, our community members, our municipalities, everyone should be working toward a solution for this.
What would you like to say directly to Governor Healy and the lawmakers in Massachusetts?
I want to thank every legislator that has come forward to be supportive. Those who have signed on as co-sponsors for any of the legislation that has come through. Unfortunately, none of it has made it to the governor's desk at this point, other than reimbursement for core testing and structural engineer inspections. Thank you to them, but I urge them to not just sign on the bill and say they're supportive, but get actively involved in pushing this forward. Push leadership to support it. We have that on the Senate side. We need it on the House side, and we need it at the governor's office. Right now, our most recent effort, because our amendment that the Senate had put through unanimously on the Affordable Homes Act failed at conference committee, we are now asking our governor to use her power of executive order, which she can do. I checked, there's precedent. She can use that and get the commission started that would have been started by that amendment. Doing that now wouldn't replace a foundation now, but it would get us ahead of the ball on next year's legislative session and the budget process. We would really like to see this commission come out with its recommendation to the legislature in time for budget negotiations, so that it could become an amendment on the budget, which would make it much easier to get the ball rolling than a standalone bill, which takes much longer. It has to go to joint committee for review and hearing. Then they have to make a recommendation to Ways and Means committees, then they have to review it. It's a much longer process, and we'd be looking at a whole nother 2 years. Right now, anyone who's in support of this and wants to see something done could contact our governor through her legislative deputy director, Patrick Brown. His email is patrick.j.brown@mass.gov, and let them know that you support this, that you want the governor to use her power of executive order to make this commission happen, so that we can get that recommendation to the legislature early in next session. Mm-hmm. The reality of it is that the political pressure put on by municipalities to the state is a tool we need to use to get this done.
For those of you out there, I encourage you to get involved. This is not just an individual issue, this is a community issue, and it's going to impact our communities and our neighbors. Michelle, thank you so much for being here with us and being a great advocate and bringing awareness to this issue. Do you have any final words?
Well, I want to thank you for doing this, for helping us to educate people. The more we know, I think the further we'll get with this, and I want to encourage everyone, as you said, to get involved, to push our legislature to help our residents recover from this, and not make this a part of our housing crisis.